My name is Maya Sharma, and for 7 years, I've walked the same polished marble floors of Viridian Dynamics like a ghost. Present, reliable and visible. I arrived fresh out of grad school with notebooks full of ideas and a heart full of hope. Back then, I believe hard work spoke louder than words. I stayed late, came in early, covered for colleagues on maternity leave, restructured entire client onboarding systems without being asked, and still made time to bring coffee to the interns on their first day. I never missed a deadline. Never complained. Never asked for anything. Until last Tuesday. That morning, I'd rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times. I wore my best blazer, the navy one that made me feel like I belonged in the executive wing, and carried a folder thick with performance reviews, client testimonials, and a carefully calculated market analysis of my role's worth. I wasn't greedy. I just wanted to be paid what I was worth. After 7 years of loyalty, of watching less experienced hires leapfrog me with starting salaries higher than my current one, I thought it was time. I knocked on Mr. Langford's door at 10:15 a.m., right after his weekly strategy call. He barely looked up from his screen when I entered. "Maya, what is it?" he said, voice clipped, eyes still scanning an email. "I'd like to discuss my compensation," I said, keeping my tone steady professional. He finally swiveled his chair toward me, eyebrows raised like I'd asked for his firstborn. "Compensation? You've got a review coming up in Q3. "I know, sir. But it's been 7 years. My responsibilities have tripled. I'm managing the entire APAC client portfolio now." "And you're doing a fine job," he interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "But Viridian isn't handing out raises like candy these days. Budgets are tight." "I understand that," I said, gripping the folder tighter. "But market rates for my role have increased by 32% since I was hired. I'm not even asking for parity, just a modest adjustment to reflect the scope of my work." That's when he laughed. Not a chuckle. A full, condescending bark that echoed off the glass walls of his corner office. "Maya, come on. You're not in Silicon Valley. This is logistics. You move boxes on spreadsheets. We appreciate your dedication, but let's not get carried away with delusions of grandeur." Delusions of grandeur. The word stung like salt in a paper cut. I felt my cheeks burn, but I held his gaze. "I've brought in $4.2 million in retained client revenue over the last 2 years alone. Is that delusional?" He leaned back, suddenly serious, almost cold. "Look, you want more money. Go somewhere that'll pay you what you think you're worth. But don't mistake loyalty for leverage. Viridian gave you your start. Don't bite the hand that feeds you." The meeting lasted 3 more minutes. He offered me a thank you, and a half smile that didn't reach his eyes, and I walked out feeling like I'd just been told I was replaceable. Worse, I'd been told I was forgettable. I didn't cry. Not then. I went back to my desk, logged into my email, and sent a single message I drafted weeks ago just in case. Then I spent the rest of the day finishing my pending tasks with robotic precision. Every spreadsheet, every client follow-up, every internal memo, I tied it all up neatly, like wrapping a gift for someone who just insulted you to your face. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying Langford's laugh, the way he'd said move boxes on spreadsheets, like my work was nothing more than clerical drudgery. But I knew better. I'd built systems that saved Viridian over $800,000 annually. I'd trained half the department. I'd been the quiet engine, keeping their Asia-Pacific division from sputtering out during the pandemic. And they treated me like an overeager intern asking for extra allowance. By dawn, my resolve had hardened into something sharp and unbreakable. 2 weeks later, I walked into Viridian Dynamics for what I knew would be my last day. I wore the same navy blazer, but this time, underneath it, I had a crisp white blouse and a new gold watch, a gift from my future self. I carried no boxes, no farewell cake, no teary goodbyes. Just my laptop, my ID badge, and a sealed envelope addressed to Mr. Langford. I dropped it on his assistant's desk with a quiet for him. "When he's free." She blinked. "You're leaving." "Effective today," I said, and walked away before she could ask why. I didn't go home. I went downtown, to the gleaming 42nd floor offices of Nexera Global, Viridian's fiercest competitor in supply chain innovation. And I didn't go as a job seeker. I went as their newly appointed director of strategic client integration. My start date? Monday. My salary? Double what I'd asked for at Viridian. Plus equity. Plus a signing bonus that covered my student loans in full. But that wasn't the best part. The best part came 3 days later, when I sat in Nexera's sleek conference room, reviewing my onboarding packet, and got a call from an unknown number. It was Langford. "Maya," he said, voice strained. "What the hell is this?" I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. I assume you're referring to the resignation letter I left on your desk. The letter? No, this contract. It's all over the industry Slack channels. Someone leaked it. Ah, so they'd seen it. My new employment contract. Signed, notarized, and now, apparently, viral in the tight-knit world of corporate logistics. I didn't leak it, I said calmly. But I'm not surprised it's circulating. People like to talk when they see someone finally get what they deserve. There was a long pause. I could almost hear him pacing his office, the same one where he'd laughed at me 2 weeks ago. Nexera? You went to Nexera? After everything Viridian gave you. Viridian gave me a desk and a paycheck that barely covered rent, I said, my voice low but steady. Nexera gave me respect, and a title that reflects my actual contribution, not to mention the resources to build something real. You realize what this means, don't you? He snapped. You're taking clients. You're taking systems. You're walking out with 7 years of our IP. I'm walking out with my brain, I corrected him. And the experience I earned through sleepless nights and weekends spent fixing your team's mistakes. The systems I built, they're mine in spirit, if not in legal ownership. And as for clients, they stayed with me because I delivered results, not because Viridian's name was on the letterhead. Another silence, longer this time. Then quieter. We could have worked something out. No, I said. You had your chance. You chose to insult me instead of investing in me. That was your mistake, not mine. I ended the call before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. From clarity. From the quiet thunder of knowing I'd finally chosen myself. Over the next week, the ripple effects began. First, 2 of my closest colleagues, both underpaid, both overworked, handed in their resignations. Then, a major client, one I'd personally nurtured for 5 years, announced they were shifting their entire APAC operations to Nexera. Rumor had it Langford through a chair in a meeting. I didn't care. What I did care about was walking into my new office on Monday morning. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden rectangles across a desk twice the size of my old one. On it sat a welcome bouquet, a framed photo of my parents. They cried when I told them the news, and a note from the CEO. Asterisk, we've been waiting for someone like you. Asterisk. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt seen. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because just as I was settling in, reviewing my first major project, a complete overhaul of Nexera's client onboarding pipeline, using a framework I'd quietly refined during my final months at Viridian, my assistant knocked on the door. There's someone here to see you, she said, hesitant. Says it's urgent. I frowned. Did they make an appointment? No. But, it's Mr. Langford. My stomach dropped. Of all the audacity. I almost said no. Almost told her to send him away. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the need to see up close how far I'd come and how small he suddenly seemed. Send him in, I said. When he walked through the door, he looked different. Older. His suit was rumpled, his tie slightly askew. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something brittle, desperation maybe. Maya, he began, voice uncharacteristically soft. I stood slowly, smoothing my blazer. Mr. Langford, to what do I owe the honor? He glanced around the office, the view, the modern furniture, the Nexera logo gleaming on the wall, then back at me. His eyes lingered on the gold watch. I came to talk, he said. About what? Client poaching? Contract leaks? Or the fact that your best people are walking out the door because you treated them like cogs? He flinched. I came to ask, what do you want? I tilted my head. What do I want? I want you to understand something. This isn't revenge. This is consequence. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't leave Viridian to hurt you, I continued. I left because I refused to keep shrinking myself to fit into a space you never intended to expand for me. You called my work moving boxes on spreadsheets. Well, those boxes, they held your company's future, and you handed the keys to someone who didn't value them. He took a step forward. I made a mistake. Yes, I said. You did. I can fix it, he rushed on. Name your price. Come back. We'll give you the title, the salary, the equity, whatever you want. For a moment, I almost laughed. The irony was thick enough to choke on. You think this is about money? I said quietly. I have more money now than I ever dreamed of. What I don't have, and what you can't give me, is the time you wasted. The years I spent believing my silence was loyalty, when really it was fear. He looked down at his hands. Then what do you want? I walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline, the same view he'd once monopolized from his corner office. Now it was mine. Not because I took it, but because I earned it. I want you to remember this moment, I said, turning back to him. The next time someone on your team asks for what they're worth, don't laugh. Don't belittle them. Don't tell them they're replaceable. Because they're not. And if you push them away, they might just walk into a room like this one and never look back. He stood there, silent, defeated. Then he nodded once, short, sharp, and turned to leave. Just before he reached the door, I called out, "Oh, and Mr. Langford?" He paused. "The contract wasn't leaked," I said. "I sent it to you myself. Consider it a parting gift." His shoulders stiffened. Then he walked out without another word. I sat back down at my desk, heart pounding, but not from nerves. From power. From the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I'd rewritten my story, not with anger, but with dignity. But even as I opened my laptop to begin my first official project at Nexera, a new thought crept in. Viridian wasn't the only company that undervalued its people. Across the city, across the industry, there were hundreds, thousands, of Mayas, working silently, waiting for someone to notice. And maybe, just maybe, my story could be the spark that made them speak up too. The phone rang again. This time, it was a headhunter. A rival firm. They'd heard about my move. They wanted to talk. I smiled, picked up the receiver, and said, "Maya Sharma speaking." The voice on the other end was smooth, practiced, the kind that's been trained to sound warm while calculating your worth in real time. "Miss Sharma," he said. "I'm calling from Hallstrom Group. We've been following your transition with great interest." I leaned back in my chair, fingers tracing the edge of my new Nexera badge. "That's flattering. But I just started here." "Oh, we know," he said quickly. "This isn't about recruiting you. Not yet, anyway. We represent a consortium of mid-tier logistics firms. Good companies, solid leadership, but they're bleeding talent. Same pattern. Loyal employees, stagnant wages, leadership that confuses silence for satisfaction." I sat up straighter. "Go on. We'd like you to speak at our leadership summit next month. A keynote. On retention. On what happens when you wait too long to value your people." I almost said no. I wasn't a motivational speaker. I was a strategist, a builder. But then I thought of Priya from Viridian's analytics team. Brilliant, quiet, working 2 jobs to support her mother, and how she texted me last night. "You gave me the courage to ask for my raise today." They said yes. Maybe this wasn't just about me anymore. "I'll do it," I said. "But only if you let me speak plainly. No corporate fluff. No synergy nonsense." There was a pause. Then a chuckle. "That's exactly why we called you." After I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd stood trembling outside Langford's office 2 weeks ago. She was sharper, calmer, unafraid. Over the next few days, I dove into my new role with a hunger I hadn't felt in years. At Viridian, I'd been careful not to outshine, not to disrupt. Here, I was encouraged to dismantle and rebuild. My first proposal, a client integration model that used AI-driven forecasting layered with human relationship mapping, was greenlit within 48 hours. The CTO personally stopped by my office to say, "This is the kind of thinking we've been missing." Meanwhile, the ripples from my departure kept spreading. A LinkedIn post I'd made, just a simple, grateful for new beginnings, had been shared over 2,000 times. Comments poured in. "You inspired me to negotiate." I handed in my resignation today, finally seeing someone who looks like me in that seat. One message stood out. It was from a young woman named Aisha, fresh out of college, working as a junior coordinator at a firm much like Viridian. She wrote, "I've been told I'm too ambitious for asking about growth paths. Seeing you walk away with your head high made me realize I don't have to wait for permission to be valued." I wrote back, "You never did." Then, on Friday afternoon, just as I was packing up to leave, yes, leave at 5:30 p.m., like a normal human being, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Viridian Dynamics announces leadership restructuring amid talent exodus. I opened the article. Langford was out, replaced by the CFO, a woman I'd always respected but who'd stayed silent during my years of invisibility. The piece cited strategic realignment and market pressures, but buried in the third paragraph was the truth. Multiple senior staff departures, including key client-facing roles, have prompted internal review of compensation and retention practices. They were scrambling. Too late. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. Not from the fight, but from the weight of how common this story was. How many people were still sitting in cubicles, swallowing their worth, waiting for a crumb of recognition. That weekend, I drove out to the coast. Just me, my thoughts, and the sound of waves crashing against rocks. I walked barefoot along the shore, letting the cold water rush over my ankles, and for the first time in years I let myself cry, not from pain, but from release. From the sheer relief of no longer carrying the burden of proving I belonged. When I returned Monday, there was a package on my desk. No return address. Inside was a hardcover book, The Cost of Silence, Reclaiming Your Value in the Workplace, and a note in elegant script. You didn't just leave a company. You lit a match. Elena Martinez, former SVP at Veridian. She retired quietly 6 months ago after 22 years. I'd always admired her quiet strength, the way she navigated boardrooms without raising her voice. I never knew she'd been watching. I placed the book on my shelf, right at eye level. A reminder. Later that day, I met with my new team. 8 people, all hired within the last year, all under 35, all radiating the kind of cautious hope I remembered from my own early days. I didn't give them a pep talk. I gave them something better, autonomy. Your ideas don't need my approval to be valid, I told them. Bring me problems, yes, but bring me your solutions too. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me, loudly. One of them, a young man named Dev, actually laughed in surprise. Seriously, I said. I spent 7 years being serious in a place that mistook obedience for excellence. We're not doing that here. That afternoon, I received an email from HR subject. Your mentorship request approved. I'd asked to formally mentor 2 junior staff members, one from operations, one from data analytics. Not because I had all the answers, but because someone should have done it for me. As I finalized my keynote outline that evening, I kept coming back to one line I wanted to open with. They told me I was replaceable. What they didn't realize was that I was also replicable. Because that was the real power, not in leaving, but in showing others how to leave with their dignity intact. How to walk away not broken, but rebuilt. Then, just before midnight, my phone lit up again. A text from an unknown number. Saw your name in the Hellstrom announcement. Proud of you. R. I knew instantly who it was. Rajiv Mehta, my old manager at Veridian, the one who'd quietly advocated for me behind closed doors, but never had the spine to push back against Langford. He'd left 6 months ago for a smaller firm, citing family reasons. We hadn't spoken since. I typed back. Thanks, Rajiv. Hope you're well. A minute passed. Then, Langford called me today. Asked if I knew how to get you back. I told him you were never theirs to lose. I smiled. Small victories. The next morning, I arrived early, before anyone else, and stood in the empty office, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in gold and rose. This space, this title, this peace, it wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. But the story still wasn't finished. Because later that week, as I reviewed a client proposal from a company called Aurora Logistics, something caught my eye. Their CEO's name, Daniel Cho. I'd worked with him briefly during a failed partnership pitch 3 years ago. He'd been impressed with my presentation, even sent a personal note afterward saying, if Veridian ever lets you go, call me. I dug deeper. Aurora was growing fast, aggressive, and, according to industry whispers, they were about to make a major play in the APAC market. The same market I'd built from scratch at Veridian. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the universe had another twist in store. I picked up the phone and dialed the number from his old note. It rang twice. Daniel Cho, came the voice, sharp, alert. Daniel, it's Maya Sharma. We met a few years back. At Veridian. A beat of silence. Then a slow exhale. Maya Sharma? The Maya Sharma? I saw what happened. Hell of a move. I'm at Nexera now, I said. And I hear you're expanding. We are, he said carefully. And I've heard things about your new client integration model. Revolutionary. Then let's talk, I said. Not as competitors. As partners. Another pause. Longer this time. You realize if we work together, Veridian won't just lose clients. They'll lose relevance. I know, I said. And that's not my goal. My goal is to build something better. Something that doesn't treat people like disposable assets. He was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, when can you come by? I looked out the window again, at the city waking up below. Somewhere out there, Langford was probably sitting in a smaller office, fielding calls from panicked board members. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I'll be there Thursday, I said. And as I hung up, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something far bigger.